Okay, so it's 2 o'clock where I am anyway, so I think let's get started. Welcome everyone to the dialogue today on young masculinities and COVID-19. You're all very welcome. Before we start, I'm just going to go over a few of the technical features before we get into the discussion. I'm sure all of you are well used to Zoom at this stage. We're all pros, but just in case. Before I say anything, this webinar will have interpretation into French and Spanish, thanks to our interpreters Hazel, Laura, David, and Marie. So please select the language that you'd like to listen to the webinar in, using the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. And if you choose nothing, you'll hear the whole webinar in English. Okay, so let's go into some of the technical features then quickly. Just a reminder to please remain muted when you're not speaking, and to join the discussion in the chat box. So please feel free to use the chat box as we go along to add your questions and comments to the panelists, as they will be read out at the end of the dialogue. And feel free to use the chat box in English, French, or Spanish. Please edit your name so it appears correctly in the chat box so we know who you are if you wish. Use the thumbs up, the thumbs down, and the emoji reactions if you wish. And just to let you know, we will be recording this webinar and we will be sharing the webinar with you all afterwards as well. And we're also streaming live on Facebook at the moment. So just before we start, I'm going to unmute you all briefly, and I'd just like everybody to give a quick hello in your native language or whichever language you feel most comfortable in. Okay. Go ahead.
Buenos días.
Hello, everyone.
Morning.
Hola.
Marhaba.
Hola.
Hola, hola, buen día desde Chile.
Bonjour,
Hola,
bonjour.
buenos días, de Ecuador.
Gratos saludos de Colombia. Gracias.
Great. So good to hear so many diverse voices joining us from all the different corners of the world. Always great to hear you, and you're all very welcome. First, I'm just going to give a little brief introduction to Men Engage Alliance. I know some of you will be more, and some of you will be less familiar with us. So Men Engage Alliance is a global alliance, and we work to transform unequal power relations and patriarchal systems by addressing and transforming masculinities, and through building inclusive alliances from the local to the regional to the global level. We work with men and boys using an intersectional feminist approach, and we foster joint actions in partnership with women's rights, gender, and other social justice movements. Next slide, please. So as you can see in the map here, we're a large network of over 700 civil society organizations all around the world, and we're organized in 6 regional networks and 42 country networks. Men Engage Alliance encompasses organizations that not only ones that work exclusively with men and boys, but also youth organizations, SRHR organizations, LGBTQ rights organizations, and other diverse organizations. In recent years, Men Engage has been increasing our focus on youth leadership and engagement. So by this, we mean not just engaging with boys and young men as a key constituency group in our programming, which of course is very important to achieve gender equality, but also strengthening and amplifying and supporting the leadership of young leaders and activists within our alliance. So in all of our youth-focused activities, we work with the Men Engage Youth Reference Group, which is a diverse group of young activists across our 6 regional networks. So this webinar was a brainchild of the Youth Reference Group, and it's been a collective effort.
English
Group. So speaking of the Youth Reference Group, I'm now going to pass you on to our moderator, Tivia Collins, who represents CARIMAN, the Caribbean Male Action Network, our regional network in the Caribbean. Tivia is originally from Guyana, but is based in Trinidad and Tobago. Tivia, would you like to introduce the webinar, please?
Hello everyone. Where I am, it's good morning, but I know for many others, it's good evening, good afternoon, etc. Today, the Youth Reference Group from the Men Engage, we decided that we wanted a space to be able to talk about young people, and particularly within this time in the world, we know that COVID-19 and a lot of the lockdown measures have been, being imposed by governments around the world have profound impacts upon the lives of young people, which include issues in terms of their mental health, their physical well-being, education, employment, relationships interpersonally, as well as professionally, etc. And so this is actually the third webinar in the series for Men Engaged, titled Patriarchy, Masculinities and COVID-19. And today, the Youth Reference Group is taking the discussion with 4 profound youth leaders from around the world. And they're each going to talk to us about their diverse contexts and how their experiences in their part of the world has been in terms of dealing with the pandemic and how it's been affecting their lives and their activism. So they're going to share with us a lot of examples today in the short few minutes that you're sharing with us. They're going to talk about some strategies they've implemented to deal with challenges and issues. They're going to share how their work has been affected and how their work has changed and how they've developed new ways of dealing with issues. And so today we have Hassan, who's joining us from Lebanon. He's the Senior Masculinities Program Officer of ABAD. Then we have Eleni. She's the project coordinator of the Young Man Initiative, Act for Society, and she's from Albania. We have Kapila, who is the founder of Voices of Humans, and he is from Sri Lanka. And then of course we have Festus, who is the director of Q Initiative in Kenya. So before we get started with the conversation, I'm going to hand you over to Tom, who's going to do a quick, informal question and answer segment with all of you participating, and then we're going to get straight into our conversation. So Tom?
Thanks, Tivia. Hey, everyone. Yeah, good to be joining you for this conversation. And yeah, thanks for joining. So we're going to start by kind of everybody sharing a little bit first, before we hear from all the speakers that Tivia just introduced. We're going to use a tool called menti.com. So go ahead and open this up in another browser. You can use your phone if you've got a smartphone handy. And then when you're on menti.com, the code is going to be 757566. And yeah, go ahead there, and we're going to just all kind of brainstorm a few questions about like what you're seeing in your context as young people or as people working with youth and young people. And the question is this: feel free to answer in the language you're most comfortable with. We're going to try and translate the ones that come through in Spanish and French. So yeah, menti.com, enter that code that's displayed here on the slides. The question is, how has the pandemic impacted young people in your context? So think about things that are specific to young people. Obviously, it's had a profound impact for people generally, and it's had profound impact for young people specifically. But it might be specific impacts as well based on your context, based on the government response in your area, based on other factors other than youth, such as ethnicity or class or a disability or ability. So, and gender, of course. So just think about how is the pandemic impacting young people? And while you do that, I'm gonna stop sharing this so that I can go to the actual responses, and we'll see those coming in. So I just need to hit start on this presentation in Menti. So if you're all in Menti, then you should be ready to go, and I will just get that started. Okay, so think of your response, and now we have present. Okay. So, okay, I can already see things coming in, so that's great. I'm going to share my screen so you can see as well. So you can submit as many responses as you want to this question. But when you're done, come back to this Zoom call, because we're going to see the responses coming up. Okay, loads coming in. Yeah, increased domestic violence, and that's something we talked about. We didn't talk about it on a previous webinar. Not specifically talking about youth though, so that's a good one to discuss. Homelessness, closure of safe spaces, isolation, sexual health, sexuality, widespread unemployment. Yeah, frustration, inability to experience social rituals like graduation ceremonies, uncertainty about futures, unexpected, some good and bad outcomes. And sorry, these are going very fast, so I'll just pick up on the ones that I can. And we'll share these afterwards as well. So if you want to go through them later, we will share them. Denmark, school and universities have been closed for a month. Lots of virtual learning, increased GBV. I wonder if Sinead, you wanted to come in. There's a Spanish one's coming past.
Yeah, so we had some in Spanish about how, of course, education has gone virtual, but a lot of people don't have access to internet, especially women and girls. We've also had some comments come in about the increase of domestic violence and hold on one sec. Yeah, affecting young people's mental health, a lot of depression, uncertainty related to the pandemic. Hold on now, they're all moving too fast, I can't read them. I think that's it for now in the Spanish one.
Yeah, I thought I would be able to scroll up and down, but we're just going to go with it. So yeah, we're seeing a few come up. Here's a few more Spanish ones, Sinead.
Yeah, so people have lost their social spaces, and in particular for young people, this means a loss of their identity as young people.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thinking about any responses that you're experiencing if you're a young person, or especially if you're working with young people. What are you seeing? People of school age, people who are kind of post-school age, maybe obviously impacted by difficulty to get jobs, difficulty to move. Some people, I was watching on the news today, young people who have become carers for older people unexpectedly, and suddenly finding themselves in a primary caregiving position as well. So yeah, lots of things coming up. So thanks for that. We're gonna stop that question because I want to move on. There's another question where we want to dig into a little bit of the gendered dynamics going on. So let me just share the screen again. Just bear with me a second on this, but yeah, the next question is going to be about the gender dynamics. And this one is, how have you seen gender norms being reinforced or changed during COVID-19? So let me just quickly switch the question over in Menti. If you all want to go back to Menti, then Mentimeter. Sorry, I have a lot of different screens going on now. So bear with me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to go to the next question in Mentimeter, but it's really about those dynamics in terms of gender. Okay. And have you seen things being reinforced in the dynamics of gender, or are things changing because of COVID? Okay, so we're on to the next question. So thinking about things like, it's just reloading in my window, but thinking about things like, have you seen opportunities for maybe boys to question stereotypical gender roles, or girls to question stereotypical gender roles in young people you work with? Or have, in some areas, things been kind of, have existing gender norms been reinforced, existing dynamics been reinforced? What are you seeing in your areas? Whether any kind of change to gender dynamics. And if you want to make it about masculinity as well, that's great. That's what we're here to talk about today as well. So yeah, thinking about our boys and young men, is this become an opportunity for transformation? Or are you seeing them just behaving in different ways that are problematic based on maybe entrenched, rigid norms of masculinity? So great, I think we've got a few coming in. So yeah, if you do manage to get to that menti.com, it's the same code if you're having problems getting in, 757566. Yeah, the gender norms are being reinforced where young girls are expected to stay at home and help out with household chores more, even more now. There's also a note saying boys in domestic chores. So we're kind of seeing a bit of different things happening in different places or different circumstances, where boys might be starting to get more engaged in traditionally feminine domestic roles versus the kind of opposite, women expected to do even more labor around the house because perhaps maybe they have even more time of other people to kind of cater to, in a way. That's a horrible way of putting it, but this is the reality. Women's mobility is reduced, increased care burden on girls, men and boys learning to stay indoors instead of being adventurous outdoors. Yeah. Public spaces dominated by men, especially after curfew, where the atmosphere is more militarized. Men also seem less likely to wear masks, for sure. Yeah, I'm seeing that here in my context. I'm based in the UK. I think everyone's seeing that. And that point about curfew is really interesting. I think some of our speakers are going to discuss that kind of thing as well. Depends on the context. Some men increase supporting in household work, while others, more women and girls, continue to do household work. And yeah, we're seeing some in Spanish, but for those in Spanish listening in the interpretation channel, the question is, how have you seen gender norms being reinforced or challenged during COVID-19 among young people in particular? Female students who go home from university are expected to take care of younger siblings instead of finishing the virtual semester. So there's a huge, huge structural power imbalance there. Sinead, there's a couple coming through in Spanish now.
Can you share your screen again? I can't see it at the moment.
Sorry, everyone. Thanks, I will share that screen. Thanks for everyone's inputs so far. Someone says, no, haven't noticed perceivable changes, but the tendency perhaps is to continue with the default gender order. Yeah, interesting.
So there's one in Spanish here saying that virtual sexual assault has increased in young boys or young men. Gender roles have been reinforced through patriarchal communication, or media. And women have mainly had to assume or take on the housework and domestic work.
Yeah, and I've heard that pattern as well about the kinds of things boys, especially in boys, male-only groups on WhatsApp or whatever, some of the stuff being shared becomes even more kind of problematic in some cases. But we're going to talk a bit about that kind of social media. I know Kapila is going to talk about social media and also about some of the positive transformatory things that are happening among men and boys. So now suddenly everyone's world has kind of been turned upside down. So shall we move on there then? Feel free to keep adding to Mentimeter, but I'm going to stop sharing and pass it back to Tivia, and we can delve into all of these kinds of topics. And again, I'll share these after the call. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tom. So let's get straight into the conversation today. So I'm going to ask a few questions to the four speakers, and one question at a time, and we have a chance to go through it. And I want us to think about this as more of an engagement with each other rather than a question and answer strict process. So of course, if the speakers, if you have thoughts in between, you're free to just let me know. We could have a conversation amongst the five of us during this time. So let's just get started right away. And I want to start off asking the first question. We could start with Hassan, and then we could go to Eleni, and then Kapila, and then Festus. So the first question, Hassan, you're free to go. We want to know today, importantly, what has been, we've been talking about this just now, everyone has contributed to the mentee, but we want to know for you, especially in the work that you do, what has been the impact of COVID-19 on masculinities and particularly on gender roles within your society in the work that you do? What have you been seeing so far?
So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. So, in spite of the fact that COVID-19 pandemic came on the heels of a deep economic, social, and political crisis in Lebanon, the lockdown also affected the household dynamics in both positive and negative ways. And this was evident by the session or the work that we did in the field with young men, women, and also with men. So I will start with the positive impact that we had, or the positive of how was, what was the positive impact of it. So first of all, throughout the sessions, we saw that young men started helping women in the household tasks, which it was not there before. So this is specifically on the gender roles. Also, men created positive relationships with their children, because we know that always men, they were in their jobs, they couldn't have time to spend with their children. So during the lockdown, they had this opportunity and they created a positive relationship. And also, men started appreciating the burden that women was doing, but he didn't pay attention of it before. So the household tasks, if she works outside the house, etc. So even that they shared that they started helping them in the household tasks. And even after they came back to work, because last week and this week jobs started somehow to go back to normal. So the lockdown is somehow being done. So even until now, they are still helping their wives, and this has a big impact on young people living inside the house, because we know the socialization process it will affect them positively. So when we see our father helping my mother in the household, so it will be evident that I will start normalizing this. So this is for somehow the positive impact. If we want to go to the negative impact, we saw that the men lost their provider role in their house during this crisis, and that increase, it was a burden, despite that we have an economic, money-wise, social-wise, it's a big crisis. So the stressors were somehow starting to burden men inside the household, and he didn't know how to deal with it. Thus, the household violence started increasing, and this was evident by the hotline calls that we received, in which we saw that since January until now we had 1,198 calls. But last year, it was 1,193. So, and we saw that most men do not have the communication skills to deal with their anger, with their stressors in the household, and also it affected the relationships inside the house, and especially on young men. If I want to speak specifically on the level of young boys, boys were more affected than girls, and this was evident by their discussions because boys were used to go outside the house, but during the lockdown they had to stay inside, and this created a little bit of like problems. But girls, they were used to stay inside the house. So, but of course, this is not in all the societies. It depends on if it's in a rural or urban places.
Thank you so much for that. Eleni?
Greetings, everyone. I am Eleni Nana from Act for Society Center, and we are located in Albania in the Balkan region, and we also work regionally. So technically what I'm going to say is covering the whole region of the Balkans, including 5 countries, and the society, the mentality, and how COVID has impacted the whole region. I would like to say, first of all, that even though we are miles away from different countries, the social situation is kind of the same, because still in Albania and in the region, patriarchy is still strong. Of course, it is softened, but we still have the issues that we're fighting for. And the impact of COVID-19 has also had positive notes and negative notes, surely. Regarding the negative notes, they were very open, because we have had the hotlines for men and boys, for women and girls, and for children exploding with new cases almost every day, and new scandalous cases that have gone out during the pandemic, when people were in lockdown. So violence was going in high rate during those days, and also there was an educational crisis, because parents had to homeschool their children and help them with their issues and their subjects from home. Which was very hard, since before that the family did not most parents were taking care of their children homework and just accompany them and help them out through their homework and learning processes. Regarding the positive impact, there were also I think that we have both streams at the same time, because we also had a lot of positive impact. Many men and boys, apart from girls, because surely even girls were helping their parents even before the lockdown. But during the lockdown, when speaking to our members of the NGO and volunteers, they have reported from the online sessions that we've held, because we've held the online sessions during the whole lockdown time. They started doing chores and also started cooking. So many of them actually reported that they found out that they actually love cooking. There was one boy that said cooking now, especially rice and pasta, for example, were his new job at home, that he would be continuing to do even after the lockdown. And actually he has, even now that the lockdown in Albania has stopped, so we are free to roam the roads freely, he still keeps doing on his favorite chores, like cooking and laundry, probably within the house. Another thing that in the same way that it was negative, it is positive now. Men, parents, fathers, and also bigger brothers have started taking more care of their children or younger siblings when it comes to school homework. So we have this paternal figure that is more present in the household regarding the children's upbringing and learning processes. So as long as it was, even though it was a kind of an educational crisis within the household, now since it was 3 months, 2 to 3 months that these families had to homeschool their children, now it is like a stronger point that hopefully maybe next year, next academic year, we will find that it has changed into a tradition kind of within the household to make the homework of the children together, and strengthening parenthood and fatherhood within the families.
Thank you so much. Kapila, feel free to tell us.
All right, I hope you can hear me properly.
Yes, we can.
First, I want to thank Men Engage for this wonderful initiative. And, but unfortunately, I want to say that around the world, even Sri Lanka, maybe we didn't use young people properly to mitigate these issues, and also to prevent these issues. So with that understanding, and everybody said about kind of maybe uncomfortable images they share it, but I want to tell like kind of very positive things very first, then I'll go to the uncomfortable situations. With the Sri Lankan context, when I talk about masculinities and how it affects to young people especially, like many innovative things came up actually, many innovative things. And also especially the family, especially the men caring and you know, the boys, they shared household activities and they shared family stuff. So they engage with mother and they engage with father. And because earlier they didn't have this opportunity because of the outside world and capitalized world, many boys, many girls, they went outside, they interact with the outer layers. But this is the time when it comes to Sri Lanka, because most of we have like a village families, like rural communities, local communities, and they again went to their homes. Because of that family relationship, it develops. So, but again, with my experience, I was living in the village. With my experience, I saw that men, they had privilege to depend on their sisters, their mother, to have their food, to have their, like, you know, washing dresses. And here raining, I hope you can hear still. So yeah, so these are the negative aspects, because of the impact. When you go to outside, all the boys, they were sharing that all the masculinities with other surroundings. But this is the time we were locked down. Because of that, what happened? Men, they depend on their family members to fulfill their needs. So that's the bad thing we faced in COVID-19. And also I want to tell you that they lost their status. They lost their power. Because earlier, they used to go to outside and they work with outside people, and they use their power sometimes because of the patriarchy, because of the masculinity learning. But this time, everything what happened, everything created one platform where inside the home, they use that power to control someone. So that's how it affects to the family lives. And also another thing I want to tell you, this affects psychologically, mentally, and physically. And because it has positive and negative aspects also, because earlier they had a role, traditional gender role, as a protector, as a breadwinner, sometimes as a power creator. But this is the time they stay at home sometime and they use invisible way this power. How? First thing is violating rights, going outside in the curfew time. You can see in Sri Lanka, every day, curfew time, we saw more than 1,500 cases where young boys especially, they are going outside, they are violating rights. They are dealing with drugs and they are transporting drugs to another place because they had that socialized behavior where we didn't teach our boys, oh, you can stay home and maybe read a book or maybe share household activities. Like, we didn't teach that. Because of that, he took some time to control himself, to manage himself, to stay home. So there are positive and negative aspects also. I think many people shared it. So I will keep that note here and let's make a conversation again.
Yes, thank you so much, Kapila, especially for touching on, something like toxic masculinity and how we think about how gender roles are constructed in such a way that men can feel trapped if they have to stay inside, because inside is a space where women occupy. So really, thank you for that. Festus, let's hear from you.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. So hi guys, my name is Festus and I'm in this meeting from Kenya. And I'll try not to touch on what everyone else has talked about, but I broke my question into two and I hope I'm audible. So when you asked what's been the impact of COVID-19 on masculinities, the first thing I thought of was how it has made people realize that masculinity is not homogeneous, that not all men or not all people who perform or experience masculinity perform it the same way. For example, men who are poor or men who live in the rural areas have disproportionate access to information. So, and there's been a lot of information flow on COVID, on the prevention, on government containment. But you find that men who live in the city or men in urban areas, men who have access to the internet or to TV and radio are able to stay informed. But those who are in rural areas do not have this information. We have noticed that poor men or men working in informal sectors, such as the juakali or in the fields or those who do masonry, the whole day they don't have access to information. So for example, in Kenya, those who live in the slums and who work in far areas and they have access to their phones, they are the first people to be affected by police brutality, because they thought, when they're leaving the work, going back home, they thought things were normal. But then because of the curfew information about the curfew being shared only on radio, they are not able to know. We have also noticed this toxic masculinity in the form of police brutality, and it has targeted the same, and we've noticed that as much as it has targeted the same people, it has had profound impact on young men and boys, especially due to the adventurous nature that you said, like boys wanting to stay outside or, playing around, wanting to play at the compound. And one such case was a young person, a 13-year-old called Yasin Moyo, who was killed by a stray bullet that was fired by a police, and it ended up hitting him, and he was on their balcony. And so that and a couple of other things have really brought about the negative aspects of masculinity. Of course, there are the positives where there are people who have, people are spending more time with their families, and, there's father-son connection, and, and wives and husbands reconnecting, but that is for another day. On gender roles, I want to say that, like for non-binary individuals, it has been a challenge, especially those who have been forced to go back home, either because of loss of income, and then they're forced to go back to their communities, or because of, schools being closed. For example, if someone was identified as non-binary, when they go back home, they're forced to, revert to their heteronormativity, where they have to go back to the boy-girl binary, which is a challenge for most people. It's causing emotional distress. And also the loss or acquisition of, provider status has shifted, has disrupted the power relation. So for example, if in my queer relationship, if for example, my boyfriend lost ability to earn, and then I became the major provider, it has brought on unequal power relations, and this disharmony has also reflects in gender-based violence. So yeah, basically that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Now, all four of you mentioned particularly, the fact that more men, especially, are in the homes, are engaged in, activities within the home. But I want to take it a bit further, because while in the home, is a space now that is being occupied by everyone, people are using the online, as we are right now, to communicate with each other. And we're seeing, a lot of insecurities in terms of access to information technology, etc. And Festus, you just mentioned that, particularly when you spoke about, people who are poor, do not have the same levels of access and others do. So I want us to talk a bit about the connectivity and the experiences of connectivity within the COVID-19 era. And the question here, and I'm gonna pose this question first to Eleni. The question really is, how have you seen transitions or changes through especially the work that you do with online platforms being used to address challenges? How, in other words, how has the internet, how has our phones, our computers, and access to these types of things, how have they impacted our ability to communicate, especially when we're dealing with issues around men and young boys, masculinities in general? Eleni, and then we'll go to Kapila, and then Festus and Hassan.
Thank you for the question. Okay, first of all, I'd like to say that the transition from face-to-face contact with young men and women to online was actually happened within 2 weeks of when we first got the lockdown, the regional lockdown. As I said, we are a broad partnership of NGOs within the region working for the Young Men Initiative. And we are working with over 130 communities. So it's a lot of people to reach out to and to find online. We have almost 3 times a week, the partners would gather and just make the plan and see what works for one community and what works for another. And when in the moment that we have this issue that we cannot reach a certain community that has poverty or other issues, internet issues, or just cannot reach out to high-end technology, then what are we going to do? And actually, this is what we did. We created a plan, a country-focused plan for all the countries in order to see what would work best for each country and each community. In the moment that I had trouble reaching out to some of the youngsters at one of the schools that we worked with, we partnered with the teachers. So we would reach the youngsters through the online sessions that they were doing with their headmaster teachers, and we would go in within those hours. And this is how we worked it out. Every community has a specific difficulty, but every community has one strong point that we can connect to and reach out to them. So this is what we use. We were very flexible with hours, so it was easier in the moment that we connected to them in the hours that they were mostly available. So not everyone had, there were a couple children that had to do school stuff, and our youngsters could not use their computer or phone for that reason at certain hours of the day. So we would be flexible to reach out to their possibilities in connecting with us. It took a lot of mapping and asking and planning of the activities of the online sessions, and finding out what parent is more supportive, so he can push also the parents of these other kids. And it got to a lot of collaboration. Anyway, the strong point of Young Men Initiative is that we have a club, and in every school that we work with, we have a club that is called the Bmn Club. This is we actually have it weekly in our offices in normal times, but during these times we of course had it online. In this club, young men and women meet weekly and go through issues that they cannot talk about in their homes or school because they do not feel comfortable with. They have the possibility to talk to us and to talk to each other with these issues, and mostly from young men, we find that they want to talk about toxic masculine roles that they think they have to follow in their society, in school, or in their families, and they cannot talk about that. That's the reason they cannot talk about that openly in these two zones. We are a safe zone that they can openly speak about how they really feel, and what are the roles that they want to catch up, and what are the roles that they feel are not suitable for them as a character, or just know that they are wrong to be considered important roles of their behavior. We have been able to reach our target groups through the online means, and the Bmn Club members themselves were the ones that spread the information to their peers for the online sessions. So they were a key component to us, because they were pushing their peers and spreading the information when the sessions are working, and actually let us know what kind of topics their friends, guys or girls, their friends needed to be spoken about for the next session. And that's what we were organizing based on these young people's needs and the issues that they were having back home during the lockdown. We had the sessions organized in order to meet their needs and to discuss about what their fears were and what their difficulties were.
Thank you, Eleni. Kapila, how have things been in Sri Lanka, especially with the use of information technologies and the online platform? How has that been for you, Kapila?
And first, I want to say I really like this topic because it's online, and I used to do a lot of videos during COVID time and so about social issues, especially gender-related issues. And one thing I will give you one example. Like I use my mother's cooking stuff, and I tell like boys like, why you are just staying at home and doing nothing? Just go to your kitchen and learn some new things, and there are new stuff going around. And not only COVID-19, you have to do these things when you need it, when you have like possibilities. Like so, because I use innovative, creative stuff to convey this message. If I say something using online platform, oh dear boys, you should understand these are traditional gender roles. You should challenge this gender role. No one will listen because I tried. So therefore, I use this kind of techniques. So in Sri Lanka, online platform, people use in a different way. One thing is creating a dialogue first. They use online platform to create in a dialogue, just dialogue. It rotates actually with the capitalist people who have data, who have internet, who have other facilities. How about the village people who live in Sri Lanka? Because internet facilities in Sri Lanka, 10 million people, they use internet in Sri Lanka, 10 million. We have 21 million all around Sri Lanka, but only 10 million. So how about other 10 million? So one question. Second question, social media, people using social media, only for 6.4 million. So only 6 million people using social media. Then even my video, maybe only 4 million people, only maybe 50,000 people they will watch. But how about other people who doesn't have any access? So that's the issue, that's the issue. So they use creating a dialogue and taking action. One of my video I use through Instagram to tell boys especially not to go to outside, but stay at home. So I use two sentences. I will stay my home, you stay your home. Ha ha ha. That's the thing. So I asked from Instagram followers and fans, friends, just make a small video, send to me. I'll grab all the videos with the one video and I'll share. Then what happened actually, more than 20,000, 30,000 people, they shared this video through Instagram, and it create kind of awareness where I'll stay my home, you stay your home. So that kind of innovative tools I use during COVID time. And also some people actually, unfortunately, they use online platform to violate others' rights. Sending nude photos, because I got more than 14 messages where girls ask, teenage girls, they ask, Kapila brother, can you tell to this person, or can you report this profile? Can you, convey this message to other people, because someone used my images and they make nude pictures and they share. So that's the worst thing happened, COVID-19 time, sometime in Sri Lanka, because we had a dialogue through webinars also, sometime live streaming also, because they violate others' right. And cyberbullying was there, cyberbullying. So that's another thing, because hate speech was there. They use online platform to create hate speech. One of the YouTube channel creator, he created hate speech against LGBTIQ community. He said it's a psychological issue, but he's the person who used this issue to take all the advantages and to have more likes to his channel. So that's the worst thing. So therefore, people use online platform to violate others' rights, to show their like kind of masculine behavior, and to show their power as boys and men. So, but there are good things happen in Sri Lanka. I want to really appreciate Family Planning Association. They use online some numbers. People can contact, they can report violence against women issues, as well as they will give counseling. So therefore, Family Planning Association did that great job. And Sarvodaya, they collected food and everything through online platform. They support to rural community, and especially for rural kids. And also Leeds, they support with a food and like other things to rural community, and they use online platform. And also Women in Need Sri Lanka, they support they support through counseling service, and other many organizations and youth clubs, Rotaract Club, Lions Club. They did a lot of work, like especially like through school, Rotaract Club, Interact Club. They created awareness programs. They support people. A lot of charity-based organizations created through online platforms in Sri Lanka. So that's those are good results. So finally, psychological support. Some group of people, they voluntarily, they created some Facebook group, Instagram group. They said that we have counselors, we have psychologists. We will support you free of charge. Contact us, something like that. And very interesting story. One of my friends, she openly said, if someone alone and someone faced isolated, depression, just call me and talk to me. That's a very beautiful thing. Like even individual young people, they created very positive impact through online platforms. So these examples I can give through I can give from Sri Lanka, but the same time I'm not sure about the percentage, but the same time so many people violate others' rights using social media. But another way created huge impact also, promoting new norms, new roles, new gender roles, new unconstructed, like a new way of behavior patterns. We promote through social media. So therefore, I'm glad that at least sometime, because of the COVID-19, people unlearn that learned behavior, and again they relearn the new behavior, new norm. So that's the positive side. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kapila. Festus?
Your mic.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, I keep forgetting. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
So in terms of using social spaces to transform gender ideologies, I can point out a few examples. And the first one is use of social media to create safe spaces, especially for queer youth. And because, and I'll give the example of Q Initiative, which is an LGBT organization. And the work that you've been doing, we've been forced to shift all our work online. And one of the decisions that we had to make was to center our young people during this time. And so we use WhatsApp, we use Instagram in terms of IG Live, we use Twitter just to check in with people and find out how they are during these difficult times. The other thing that you've noticed is, we have used social media to mobilize and to mobilize clients for our teletherapy sessions. So teletherapy is, you know, is a service where instead of going to meet the counselor physically because maybe of travel restrictions or, you know, or the government directives, we use Instagram and Twitter and Facebook to mobilize clients for our therapy sessions. So our communications team designs posters which are themed based on various mental health issues. We post them, we share them on our social media pages, and any person who's interested calls the number or sends a short message, and our social worker uses that information to book an appointment with a therapist. So far, I've seen it's been a success because people can call in from wherever. At first, we thought it would be limited to Eldoret, where we come from, but we also found that we receive calls from different parts of Kenya. So that is one of the pluses of using social media. We have used social media to organize, especially for protests, and I'll give the example of, you know, the hashtag End Police Brutality, that, you know, as much as it was inspired by incidences in the US, we found that even when people were tweeting and commenting and guys were asked, so can't you see the relation between the police force? Like, we're talking about police brutality, whether it's across the continent or whether it's, you know, across the borders. And we have used that, and it has been successful because human rights organizations have been able to, you know, use hashtags to drum support and, you know, to draw attention to the relevant authorities, and several cases have been reopened. So that's a plus. The last thing, also, like, and I don't know whether this is online or just technology, but when the curfew started, there's a woman who lost her life. There's several women who could not access medical services, especially those who were pregnant. They couldn't access maternal services. I don't know if it's maternal maternity. And so one of them died on the way. And we have apps like Little Cabs, which is a variation of Uber, and they offered services for, you know, for any woman who wants to access services after curfew, and we thought that was really progressive. And yes, using social media, like, you know, and using apps like Zoom for the webinars, like, and a perfect example is the youth reference group. Like, we have never met, but we constantly meet, and we've been meeting on various occasions, and I think that's a good plus, and we can see the changes and we can see the impacts, for example, this call. So everything else I think has been shared by others, so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Hassan.
So yes, regarding the online platforms, actually after coronavirus outbreak, our organization Abad started shifting to online modality, whether it's case management for women and also psychological sessions for young men and men in the men center that we have, awareness sessions and psychosocial support sessions. And this is to make sure that the delivery of services are still on track even under these circumstances. And this actually gave the space for men to speak more freely and in more comfortable way, because usually men do not attend such sessions because they don't want to be engaged into discussions that challenge the masculine image of them. So it was beneficial to use online platforms, and actually it created access to those who could not access before. And actually we did a campaign here in Lebanon. It was called using social media, of course. It was called Locked Down, Not Locked Up. So this campaign was mainly to, so we told women that we still want to give help. So we ask everyone to share the hotline number of Abad, the hotline number over the balconies. so that a woman can benefit from it, and then they call. And actually, the number of the calls that we received for men who need psychological support in order to stop using violence, to know how to manage the stressors, manage the anger they have. So also they through the main hotline, they took the men hotline, and they benefited from the service. And at the same time, we shifted all the projects that we have to fit online. Of course, like the key messages and all the sensitization and the awareness session that we had, we made sure to deliver a COVID-19 message to raise awareness about COVID-19, how it is, how it can spread, how much it's dangerous, and also we gave messages that are related to masculinities, gender roles, how men can seek help, and also we delivered psychosocial support sessions that also to men, which aims to deal with stress and anger management. So they speak about their stressors, what are the emotions they are facing, or that are resulting from these stressors, and what are the behaviors and how it can lead to violence, and also what are the healthy ways in order to deal with your stressors and your anger feelings once you are in the lockdown or once you are facing problems inside the household. For the cases that seek psychological help, it depended. So it depends. If it's a high-risk case, we managed to produce. We produced guidelines in which they can provide their safety, or they can seek safety, and they can have face-to-face therapy sessions. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hassan. And so now we're going to go into the last question for this session. You know, we have about 10 minutes or so. So I would ask each speaker to be as precise as you can on this last round. We're going to start, of course, with this time Kapila, then we'll go to Festus and Hassan, and then we're going to end with Eleni. And the question that I want us to think about as we conclude this session is, how do you think that we all can contribute towards a gender-just world? And when we think about this question, I'm asking you to consider, especially now in the time that we're living in, and also post this era. And note, I'm not saying post-COVID, because I'm not sure if we're ever going to be in a situation where it's post-COVID, but rather we've learned to live within this new reality that we exist in. I don't even like the term new normal, but I love new reality. So how it is we're existing in this time, how can we contribute to a gender-just world, and think about, you know, a lot of vulnerable groups such as those who are part of the LGBT community, and those in high areas, for example, those with disabilities, those with mental health issues, those who are migrant workers, for example. Yeah. How do we contribute to a gender-just world? So we're going to start with Kapila.
All right, fantastic. With the time limitation, I'll do it fast. Yeah, we had a very kind of masculine highway. Then we put some barriers. Then it has a slow pattern where we face COVID-19. Now again, people going to have that masculine highway when you go to outside. So I can see it. Therefore, very first thing is like, we will understand our basics, our roots, where every individual have uniqueness, and to respect that character. That's the thing. And also, one thing is like, everything is changing in this world. Even the nature is changing. Even our physical body is changing. Therefore, my habit, my attitude, my respect towards someone, I can I can change it in a positive way. So that's the final thought I want to say, because people think that, oh, I can't change this, or we can't change this process. We talk 60, 50 years, 100 years. We can't talk about marginalized people's rights. We can't talk about disabled people's rights, but it will take time. Of course, it will take time. But one single action is very important for this post-era time. So that's the final thought I want to say. Therefore, to challenge these masculine structures, we want to create a small, beautiful patterns, like my dress, like every and each single small action and small pattern, it will create a beautiful world. World is may not beautiful like 100%, but we can do our part. That's the most important part. Therefore, take action, talk about others' rights, create love, create peace, create humanity, because we need it now. Therefore, take one single action. Be the change, be the change, be the change. And thank you, Men Engage, for this wonderful, great webinar with youth and young people.
Thank you, Kapila. I like that. Be the change.
Young people and adult people. I was focusing over our young people. So the panelists and the speakers. Yeah.
Right, Festus. Unmute.
So this time I've remembered to unmute. So so I've been thinking about this, and I think one of the things that we can use the current momentum that is present, like and I'm not referring to COVID, I'm referring to, you know, like the end police brutality and, you know, Black Lives Matter and things, because people are questioning things, and, you know, like, and men for the first time, men are joining women in fighting for, you know, preservation of lives, and, you know, and the fact that people are calling up police brutality. I've noticed from my circles, people are also, women also holding men to account. Like you're saying, when you're saying our lives matter, we have been saying our lives matter for the longest time, then why is this not, why haven't you supported us? So I feel like we can use this momentum where we are questioning, where we are learning, and where we are saying, did this work for us or not? So we can use this momentum to ask these questions, and, you know, and to inspire the change that, you know, Kapila has talked about. So when you're reflecting, when using, as we are under lockdown and we are cannot really forced, but as we are under lockdown and we are, you know, with our families, and we are with people who maybe used to oppress us, and I'm using this from a queer person, and I'm using it from a queer perspective, like using this lockdown has forced me to have difficult conversations with family members, especially around homophobia. And I was in a conference and someone called it teacup advocacy, where you are having a cup of tea and you're talking about, you know, things, you're talking about issues, and this one might be more impactful. And we can start, you know, it's not like someone will chase you away or something, like, okay, holding all matters of security constant, but we can start talking to each other about the change that you want to see. So let's start with our neighbors, let's start with our family members, let us start with, you know, with the people around us, and then we can join other forces. So yes, let's use the current space we are in, and, you know, and use it as an opportunity to learn new things. And like you said, the new reality, we have the opportunity to shape our new reality, and let us encourage that with compassion and with love. Thank you.
Thank you, Festus. So we're being the change from Kapila, and we're working with compassion and love. So Hassan.
So to contribute to a gender justice world. So I guess there is like several steps. I don't want to repeat what others said, because I believe in the same, and for time constraint also. So I think we should like do more advocacy work toward gender equality through education, through policy making, that also help to attain this big objective. And we have to combine all these three together in order to, at the individual level, community level, and actually on the governmental level, always to make all the programs that we have to make gender mainstream, and to make sure that we are adjusting the needs of both genders equally. So make sure that to always work with women, and at the same time to engage men and young boys in order to reach the main objective, because all our work for engaging men is to advocate for women and for women's rights. So it's just it's not just to raise awareness for men or giving concepts to men. And as I said before, it's very important to make sure that gender and gender lens are adopted, cross-cutting through different perspectives in all the projects that we're doing.
Thank you, Hassan.
Yeah, in order to keep it short, I would like to actually just say something that I have been told that has changed my perspective on the work that I do. I am a social worker by profession, and I've been told this the first day of my bachelor degree. Our professor came in and told us, if you are here because you want to be heroes of the whole world, because you want to change the whole world, then just give up. Because you're going to burn out tops of within 5 years and you're not going to make a change. If you want to stay here, you will owe it to yourself to just change the people around you, the world around you, not the whole world. In the moment that you reach out to the people around you, and this includes family, neighbors, the youngsters that we're working with, another colleague, a classmate, whatever, the whole world around us, then we have changed him or her. He or she will be the change in their own family. And in the future, you have changed the world of this person. This person will change the world of his or her partner. This person will make a just world for his or her partner, his or her children, his or her neighbor. So this is the kind of change that I aspire to be doing in the world. And I know that I'm doing, because these young men and women that I've seen change, I know that in the future, I know that now they are changing their family and have better connections within their family and school. And I also know that in the future, if they decide to have a family, it would be a non-toxic family. It would be a healthy family, raising healthy children that would bring more justice to this world.
Thank you so much, Eleni, and thank you to all of the speakers. And just to wrap up, everything that was just shared. So we have Be the Change from Kapila. From Festus, we hear that we need to work with compassion and love. From Hassan, of course, we deal with cross-cutting activism that ensures all perspectives in the world are considered. And of course, finally, from Eleni, which wraps it up for me perfectly, change the world around you. I think that is so important. So thank you to all of the speakers. I'm going to now hand over to the Men Engaged team, where we'll get some questions from the audience. And of course, the speakers, you will respond as is needed. So Sinead?
Thanks, Tivia. So we just have a few questions coming through in the chat box. We've quite a few, but maybe if everyone can just take one or two that they'd like to respond to. We had one question about specifically the impact of the pandemic on particular groups of young people, including immigrant youth, LGBTQ community, and youth with disabilities. We had somebody question whether these changes in gender roles, especially around household chores and caregiving, do you think they will last after lockdowns, or if this is just a temporary change that we're seeing? We asked somebody asked, how do you work on dating violence among young people in the context of the pandemic? We also had a question about how this is making young people think about virtual sexuality, which can often turn to sexual harassment, and how disrespectful images online can affect sexual health. Let's see what else. And then another question about asking the panelists, what has worked for you to get more young men from different communities to actually come into these spaces, and especially to open up and share their experiences with each other? Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now. I think that's plenty.
So Sinead, how do you want us to do this? Do you want them to respond to all, or to pick like?
I think if we could just do a round again for all 4 panelists, and if they just want to respond to however many questions they would like to. So maybe we start with Kapila, maybe?
All right, thank you, Srinat. And I have one example for LGBTIQ rights and discrimination. Recently, COVID-19 time, we created a YouTubers group actually, like who are doing YouTube videos. We created a group, we had a Zoom call, and now we have a WhatsApp group. We're going to produce 1 by 1 videos to challenge these stereotypes, like sometimes creating educational tools to understand what is LGBTIQ rights, and so therefore I think it was a really good initiative. What happened in COVID time, that LGBTIQ people also face some discrimination. So this initiative will focus about to create create comfortable environment for LGBTIQ community through online platforms. So I want to contribute with that example.
Anyone else feel free to jump in?
Oh, sorry. Should I go?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I think the impact of COVID, I'll mention that the aspect of rural youth and LGBT youth. I think, and I'll share this from the example of the work that we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of advocacy work, and I think so. Our work involved working with the power holders, and to create change. But now that our activities were stopped, we noticed that there is a gap, that we need to start looking at the impact of the work that we're doing on the people that we serve. And like most of our young people would go hungry. Yes, SRHR and access to SRHR is an issue, but we also notice that we need to start looking at other aspects of LGBT persons' lives, and which makes us think about socioeconomic rights, because for someone who's homeless, who's food insecure, or doesn't have access to housing, it becomes very hard for them to actually stand up and and claim their rights, because already they're marginalized in their own countries, and they feel disenfranchised. So what you've learned and what you want to prioritize moving forward is making sure equipping our young people, not just with advocacy skills, but with skills that will enable them to live dignified lives, and so that even when they're able to call their governments, and they're able to call civil society, they're able to call everyone to account, and to create the difference that is needed. Because when someone is battling mental health, when someone is battling, I can't afford basic needs, it's very hard for you to say that, oh, but their major issue is access to SRHR. So we are thinking, as Q Initiative, we are thinking, how do we lead from the front? How do we listen to people's voices? How do we center them in such a way that they are the ones who will do the advocacy work, instead of going to, instead of holding states accountable, we can hold states accountable in terms of, why aren't you, providing, social security and these things. So yeah, that's what the impact of COVID on young people, and that's what we felt like. We feel like that's a priority for us moving on. We have to restructure how we work. And even when you're doing SRHR work, we also look at psychosocial benefits, and we also have to look for funds and, work with partners who are able to understand this, because at the very core of our work should be humanity. Yeah. And also the other thing we're also learning is how we should be able to have those difficult conversations amongst ourselves, and address the power relations that, that are within us and with our partners and with our funders. And so, for example, especially for those of us who rely on donor funding, do we and our partners have a shared agenda in terms of the work that we do? Or is it that when we are no longer doing advocacy, that's it, money is not, we don't have access to money? And also and we are forced to also look at the unequal power relations within the LGBT, for gay men and for lesbian lesbian and queer women are more likely to be affected by poverty. Trans youth and non-binary youth also even their chances are much higher. In terms of being poor or being food insecure. So we're also questioning those things amongst ourselves and seeing how interconnected these struggles are. So that while you're calling out, while you're saying we need to work with men and boys to come to a gender just world, we also need to work within our LGBT circles.
May I? Okay, so for the question that they are stating that changing in attitudes and behaviors, is it just temporary or it will change afterwards? So usually when we work with men or boys, actually boys is a little bit not that difficult as much as men, but usually when we work with men about attitudes and behaviors, we know that it is very hard to change attitudes and behaviors. And even if it's possible, it takes time. So that's why we should take this into consideration when we start changing these attitudes, especially, for example, here we're speaking about household responsibilities. So what we have encountered here in our sessions, we saw that men are willing to help, especially after seeing the burden that women was facing during the lockdown. And we know now that they are not quarantined anymore. So it's not, we can't be certain that the attitudes and behaviors are going to be like that after post-COVID, or they are going to go back to how they were, like patriarchy, for example. Or the roles of man, or stick to the roles of man. So it is based on person-to-person level, and it's based, of course, on the culture of the society that we are living in, or the community that are affected, that are affecting, for example, religious leaders, for example, or key persons in the area. So these all have big impact on how the culture goes. So there's many criteria or many factors that can affect if these attitudes and behaviors are going to stay the same post-COVID, or they are going to change back to how it was before COVID.
If I can go on. Regarding the question of the unpaid care and household responsibilities, from the reports of the people that we directly work with, they seem to be sustainable behaviors. Anyway, we cannot know for sure. What we plan to do, I don't want to go over what the other speakers said, so I'm thinking about long-term planning on how will we figure it out, if it is sustainable or not. During this time, during the COVID time, during the lockdown, we have had several needs assessments, our NGO and other NGOs within the region and within the country, of course, through partnerships with each other. And in the beginning of next year, we are planning to do another needs assessment to see if these behaviors are sustainable or not, so we can see the change. We cannot know for sure at this time because we just have we have just ended the lockdown, so it's not yet sure. We hope there is, and from the reports we have a very positive energy towards it, but a second needs assessment will have to be taken place a couple months later. So this is the plan to know if it is sustainable or not in our region. I would like to go, if I may, to another question that I think it's important because we all work with the young men and women. It was about how do we keep the young people motivated to come to our online sessions and to talk about the issues that bother them, and also how they are engaged into other activities. The key that I will just explain briefly is that we make them be owners of the project and of the activities. They know better what is appealing to young men and women, so this is what we do. We ask them on what activity they would like to do next, and what topic they would like to talk about later. So I think the key of keeping young people motivated and active is just to give them ownership of the program. And also there was another comment about I think it was directed to me from Edgardo regarding the link. So I'm just sending them up because I had them ready at the chat box.
Great, thank you so much, Eleni. Thank you to all of the speakers for such a rich and inspiring discussion, and also to Tivia for excellent moderation. And thank you for your questions and comments in the chat box as well. So just before we wrap up, I just want to very briefly draw your attention to the topic of accountability, which for us at Men Engage is really crucial in all that we do. So whether it be work with young men, work on SRHR, work on caregiving, we see accountability as a fundamental pillar of all our work. So in order to ensure that work with men and boys for gender equality is done in ways that's really accountable to women's rights, LGBTQ and other social justice movements, and to make sure that really what we're doing makes a genuine contribution to gender justice, and we've developed a number of these resources for our members to take a look at, and we'd really recommend that you take a look at them after the webinar. So the first, we have the accountability standards and guidelines. So these kind of outline what it means, what accountable allyship in this work really means, and provide some practical suggestions on how to do this. And then we have the training toolkit, which is a set of exercises for reflecting on and strengthening our accountability practices, both kind of as individuals and also organizationally. So just wanted to share that those are there, and they're available at menengage.org/accountability on our website. So that's it for today. We're going to be sharing this webinar with all of you afterwards. And we're also going to be having the next webinar in the COVID series, next and final webinar coming up. So please keep an eye out for it, both through our listservs and on social media. So the final webinar will be a more kind of structural analysis of some of the political responses to the pandemic, and also linking it, making some links with the kind of global outcry against structural racism that's happening around the world at the moment. So yes, thanks to our co-organizers, Abad, Act for Society Centre, Voices of Humans, Q Initiative and Carryman. I'd also like to thank our 4 interpreters for doing such a wonderful job. And to round it off, I'm going to unmute us all again, and we're just going to say goodbye to each other in our own languages. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Harry. Bye, Harry.
Que
les vaya bien.
Chao, buen día.
Chao, loco.
Gracias.
Later.
Adiós.
Mucha luz, que les vaya bien.
Muchas gracias a todos.
Abrazos.
Bye.
I cannot see the one in French, huh?
Ok. Now on est bien.